Any time, I would like to thank Indic Research Foundation for having invited me for this talk. The subject is quite interesting, although most of us feel that they are kind of aware of lone wolf attack and suicide attacks. First of all, let me tell that lone wolf attack is not a new phenomena. It started off almost as far back as 1950s, especially from the West. It was not that prevalent in our part of the world, but subsequently it has caught up since the rise of radical Islamism, which is now the epicenter is are Afghanistan, Pakistan, and this particular region, including the West Asia. So therefore, it has kind of migrated from the earlier ideologies, and now it is more prominent in the Islamic ideology as far as the lone wolf attack phenomena is concerned. Of course, I'll cover as to who was the person who actually initiated this particular type of attacks. So first of all, lone wolf attack, if you want to understand, I think we need to understand what are the types. We loosely refer to lone wolf attack. Actually, lone wolf attacks are of three types. That's the way I look at it. Lone wolf attack, when we say, it means a single attacker attacking a target without any backup or logistic from an organization. So therefore, he does not have an organizational backup. And when we talk of lone wolves pack attack, then we are talking of group of like-minded people who do not have any organizational backup of a terrorist organization or any other organization which is trying to back them up. Again, they form a kind of a gang or a group and attack a particular target. So that is commonly referred to as lone wolves attack. Then you have the lone attacker. Now, lone attacker is slightly different. Lone attacker would be, you find them in plenty as far as India is concerned. They have the backup. They have the backup of an organization, but the attack is by a single person. And when we're talking of the range of attacks or range of activities which this lone wolf attacker or a lone wolf pack attackers can do, it ranges from a suicide bombing right up to an IED explosion. So therefore, the canvas is quite big when we are talking only of lone wolf attacks. So that I thought would be a good way to start this particular discussion of mine. I would also like to say that the ideology has never been a constant in this kind of an attack. Initially, if you look at the West, it was more driven by racism. But as the Islamic fundamentalism started rising, then the ideology is predominantly Islamic. You also had a in-between scene of the LTTE and the PLO, which were more driven by nationalism. So therefore, ideologies do serve a purpose for motivation, but to say that only a particular ideology has been throwing up more lone wolf attacks would be kind of a incorrect statement. Although the quantum of such attacks in an Islamic context is far, it's quite a bit, So the quantums are definitely more. If you look at the lone wolf terrorism phenomena in the recent time, you will find that India has now started getting affected by, you'll find that Kanhaiya Lal attack, most of you are aware, so I don't want to repeat that. You had the June 21 killing of shopkeeper Umesh Gole in Amravati. It was again motivated by an extremist ideology, but their roots cannot be traced. So therefore, it is kind of fitting into that bracket of lone wolf attack. Creating them is fairly easy in the sense that organizations which are looking at such people to get motivated on their own, they throw out literature in the environment online, that is digital environment, and people pick it up. First time to do this was Al-Qaeda, under Osama bin Laden way back in 90s, when he actually took out a manual on how to actually make bombs, how to make modules, how to communicate with each other and yet not be traced back to any particular organization. This phenomena was also called by some Western experts as starfish kind of an organization, where modules are not connected with each other. So they become some kind of a lone wolf pack. So this was started fairly long time back. I shall cover some data to just explain as to what it is. Then you also have that the motivation of these attacks is mostly self. These guys read on the net these guys actually are either under the influence of their family or their ecosystem or their environment, and get motivated to take an action. What the previous speaker, Mr. Nand Kishore, was trying to say, that the motivation is there for them to do some action, to do something for, say, a fatwa given by Ayatollah Khomeini, or for that matter. In fact, Osama bin Laden was also very keen in giving fatwas, although he was not entitled as per Islamic rules to give fatwas, because only clerics can give fatwas. But then it had an effect. You found so many actions being taken by lone wolves, especially in the West, especially attacks like the London bombings, or for that matter, attack in Belgium. So therefore, lone wolf attacks have been motivated more by online. So therefore, we have to find the solution somewhere there if you want to check this. In India, you would find that SIMI has been a kind of an organization which has been trying to throw out such art, such literature on the in the environment, and Indian Mujahideens were probably the first ones who got motivated by such literature, and then they undertook a series of attacks. They became a proper organization, of course, but their method of attack was by and large lone wolf attack type of engagement. So having seen a brief about the context, let me also go to the some data of the West. See, West started seeing this lone wolf attack from 50s. They had almost 9 killed during that period, and by the time it was 2010, I'm talking of the last decade, they had almost 115 people dying of lone wolf attack, which also included various attacks such as the Dallas attack, and almost 160 people injured. In fact, in the US, it has become a very common phenomena of people getting motivated, but most of them are initially used to get motivated by racism, but now you are seeing a change, which I shall like to highlight. If you look at the case of Omar Martin, who killed 49 people at a gay nightclub in Orlando, who was the son of an Afghan immigrant, reportedly consumed by homophobia and inspired by the ISIS. So here you see a change in the trend. Whereas if you see Micah Johnson's attack, who fatally shot 5 police officers in Dallas, was an African American army vet, apparently enraged by the police killings of the black men. So here there was a change in the ideology as far as the attack is concerned. Then in 2009, there was a famous attack by the army psychiatrist Major Nadal Hassan Ramp, who rampaged his workplace in Fort Texas, killing 13 and wounding about 30. So therefore, I think we need to learn from such actions which have taken place in the past, especially in the West, to deal with it in our country, because our country is also now getting affected by it. So therefore, if I have to sum up the trends in the West, there may be differences in psychological profiles of far right extremists, ISIS sympathizers, and single issue official radicals. Single issue means black supremacy, white supremacy, etc. They are far more likely to have documented mental health history. This has been proven by a research. So maybe we need to also look at these pointers before, when we are trying to analyze people on the social media, etc., to find out potential people who can undertake lone wolf attack. Lone wolves are different from the conventional terrorists, as I have already highlighted. They do not have any backup, so therefore it is very difficult to trace them, first of all, and also it's very difficult to identify them. So therefore, they are to me, they are like one-way ticket without any address. So therefore, it is for the security forces one of the biggest challenge which we are going to face in the next few years, if the way the fundamentalism and radicalism is rising in the country. But another interesting factor is that normally these lone wolf attackers tell someone, or they leave behind an email. So if you look at these kind of small little pointers, we could find some solutions to this very, very difficult problem which we are going to face in the next few years. That's my assessment. Usually they are motivated by online motivation, as I had spoken earlier. If you look at the Indian trends, I have compared the data of 2020 and 2021. What I have realized is that the number of attacks, traditional terrorist attack incidents have reduced, but lone wolf attacks have increased. Now there are two things to it. Either that our security forces are doing an excellent job keeping these kind of terrorist incidents under check. So therefore, the organizations which are actually indulging in this have now started resorting to this lone wolf form of an attack, which cannot be traced to them, by radicalizing the youth through online media. So this is something which we need to take care of, because while the traditional attacks have reduced, but the lone wolf attacks have increased. I would like to just highlight a few cases for you, just to prove my point. Attack by Abdul Malik, alias way back in 2015. Musa in West Bengal, arrested in 2016. He was planning attacking the foreigners. Abasi, IIT alumnus, who was caught in front of Gorakhnath temple. He was an IIT alumnus. He was actually attacking CRPF personnel to get some AK-47s and MP4 for a bigger action. Then you also have attacks on CRPF personnel in Baramulla, which were later on traced to the resistance force. So what I'm trying to say is that the organizations are also now trying to cleverly motivate people so that they undertake the task which they were supposed to take by sending terrorists across, and yet get away from being pointed out by, say, India pointing out to Pakistan, or for that matter, in the Pathankot incident, which I had the honor to actually deal with. We could very easily trace these guys back to Pakistan. So that kind of a danger is avoided as far as our proxies, our adversaries are concerned. Then you have the Umesh Kole attack and Kanhaiya Lal murder case. These I'm not going to repeat because they are very fresh in the minds of the environment. So I would sum it up as far as India is concerned: rise in lone wolves pack and lone attacks in 2021, reduction in traditional terrorist attacks. This is something of a pointer to us that you and me are not safe, because anybody can be radicalized in any part of the country, and he can launch any kind of an attack, ranging, as I said, the range is from IED explosion to right up to a suicide bombing. Then you have the some recommendations. I thought it's very difficult to deal with such attacks, but I thought over it, and I felt that if it is a starfish phenomena, what is the starfish phenomena? Starfish phenomena is something, if you cut it also, it again regrows and becomes another starfish. So therefore, even if you try to stop them physically, you will find few more people getting together and starting this kind of a campaign or this kind of an activity. So therefore, the problem lies in the ideology, and we need to actually tackle the ideology. And the best weapon today is information warfare. Unfortunately, our country, as of today, is not really concentrating that much on a focused information warfare, especially when it is related to social media. Because social media is something which is today the biggest producer of such kind of attackers. We need to own our platforms now. It is high time we do that. If China can have Weibo, we can also have our own. We are trying to do it, but somehow we need to force it a little more. We need to. I'm an extreme person as far as this particular aspect is concerned. We need to block certain external platforms. Then de-radicalization program. We only tried it in Kerala and in Maharashtra. Kerala one, I believe, was quite successful in preventing people from going to ISIS, but the Maharashtra one did not succeed, primarily because it was the security forces who were told to do the de-radicalization program. It cannot be done by the security forces. The security forces are meant to fight. The de-radicalization has to be done by political entities. They have to create that environment so that people are able to come back into the mainstream. And the third aspect which we need to do as far as this kind of attacks are concerned is cyber defense. The step of National Cyber Force, which the Prime Minister has started, I don't know how far it has progressed. Possibly somebody in the service would be able to tell. But cyber defense, both offensive and the defensive aspects, have to be actually gone into in detail. You realize that most of these guys are being produced on the social media, and if you can crawl the social media, it has to be It has to be a focused effort to crawl the social media to identify these weaklings or these prominent threats in our midst, who can be then traced to a logical conclusion, detect them, and thereafter neutralize them. Police reforms. I mean, we have been talking about for the last 10 to I think 20 years. I did NDC about 10 years back. We were talking about police reforms. They are still in the pipeline. We need to do something about it. And lastly, but most importantly, intelligence revamping has to be done if we have to deal with this particular threat. Quickly, I'll cover about suicide bombing. I call this as a divine weapon. It's a one-way ticket weapon. Once launched, it's a fire and forget weapon, and therefore very, very potent. Here also there are two types of definitions. One, in that a suicide attack will be considered as a narrow definition if the damage of the target has to be done only if the attacker dies. So suicide bombing, belt bombing, these are the kind of examples. Whereas Fidine attacks are the broader concept of suicide attacks, where the death of the individual is not mandatory for destruction of the target. Ultimately, he may die, that's a different matter. But death of the attacker is not mandatory. Sometimes people have escaped after undertaking such attacks. So therefore, our defense against these have to be also accordingly structured. So just to put again all of you on a kind of a context of this particular suicide attack, only 3% terror attacks from 1980 to 2003 produced 48% of terror casualties. Look at the kind of damage which this weapon does. And 9/11, I don't want to even talk about it. 8 versus 3,000. Yale global data says 4% suicide attacks from 81 to 2006, but casualties, death 32%, out of which 90% are in Afghanistan, Iraq, Israel, Palestine territories, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. Institute for National Strategic Studies, Tel Aviv University data suggests from 2019, 149 suicide bombing attacks have taken place worldwide, versus 293 in 2018. So there has been a drop in performance. But to say that this phenomena will stop, I think we are highly mistaken. This phenomena will continue. It will only rise and ebb based on the alertness of the security forces, because there is a method to check these people. I have written a detailed chapter on this in a Sage publication book, How to Deter Suicide Terrorism. It would be worth going for people who are interested in it. They can go through it. In 2019, 22 out of the 236 bombers were women. This is another trend. Now, if it was very difficult to identify a man, to identify a woman as a bomber is even more difficult. People hesitate to check them. People hesitate to touch them. Therefore, there are a lot of, because sometimes you have to do, okay, I'm about to finish. Give me just 2 minutes. So therefore, it is the challenges galore. So I have devised myself, into two kind of two options for defending against such attacks. I call it as defense by denial and defense by punishment. What is defense by denial? Hardening of possible targets, especially high-value targets, establishment of effective protection measures, gainful utilization of special forces, effective intelligence and surveillance measures, collaborative approach. I'm talking of international collaboration, international alliances. This would go, I know it's very difficult. You'll still have China trying to oppose us, but we will have 5 more who will be supporting us. So therefore, there would be narrowing down of these guys into a particular small sector. Then you have punishment. Kinetic action has to be taken. You have to identify bomb sources. You have to identify from where people get the explosives. This chain has to be. What happens in our country is that when the incident happens, then we start tracing back. I think this kind of a regular check has to be done as a routine. And wherever you find a lead, you must go ahead. Deny resources such as explosive arms ammunition, I've already covered. Targeting training camps and operating bases, especially in our case. I'm afraid, I think we may start having training camps, etc., inside our own country as well, given the way lone wolf attacks are becoming popular. So we need to be careful inside as well. And there is an ecosystem available. You have the Naxals, you have the Northeast insurgents who are actually having such facilities within our country. So therefore, it's very easy to collaborate in this kind of milieu. Finally, I would say that two things to conclude, and that is that there are basically two types of typologies to defend by denial and defend by punishment. Denial is difficult because a defender will always get breached. So a time to time punishment has to be there. One attack, one surgical attack gives you a breathing space. So therefore, offensive, covert actions, etc., have to be undertaken. Next big issue is information and cyber. I think these are the two areas. If we focus on, we would be able to track these kind of lone wolf attackers. We would be able to track even suicide attackers because of our surveillance and intelligence capabilities. If we enhance them, I think if you look at these three options for us, we should be able to tackle lone wolf attacks, and I won't say completely eliminate, but at least minimize the threat. Because once the message goes across that we are at it in a different format and a different manner, the terrorist would also be deterred. Thank you very much, and thank you for giving me the time. Thank you, Air Vice Marshal Srivastava.